All right, everybody. So I wanted to get started on some more lectures. I'm not going to be able to be on campus today. I'm out of town for not an emergency, but an unexpected trip. So I will not be able to make it back to class today at 2 o'clock. So I wanted to do this to make sure we were all on the same page and good to go. So we finished up last time talking about political parties and how the median voter theorem explains how two parties react to voters. Well, what happens is, as you see the M's here, these are the median voters. And as you have two parties, call these Republicans and the blue Democrats, two parties whose centers are not at the median voter, but they are closer or farther away. And so the task for parties is to try to come to that median voter. And the party that is able to capture the median voter first in a given election scenario will be able to win the election, because the median voter represents sort of the middle of this normal distribution of the electorate. And so if your political party is able to move to the center in a way that keeps your party closer to your base, then you're able to win that election. So that's something important to remember. So we talked about all of this last time as well, the functions of parties. We talked about recruiting candidates, mobilizing voters, operating government, interfering in the majority, providing minority, provide organized opposition. If you're in the minority, this is always an important task for voters, or for political parties overall. And then, of course, parties do change. We know that through realignment theory, which is the idea that about every 30 to 40 years or so, the way voters identify with political parties changes or evolves, which is why we have the Republican and Democratic parties today, 150 years after their emergence as the main two parties, and yet they do not mean the same things that they did 150 years ago. That's fine, because that's the realignment process has gone on several times. So, excuse me, I'm so sorry I coughed. But importantly, we know that the parties aren't the same. So this is the election of 1896, and so the red you see are Republicans, the blue are Democrats. This is William Jennings Bryan. This is William McKinley. As you see, McKinley and the Republicans were able to win the industrial Midwest, the industrial New England states, and at North Atlantic states, and then the South was mainly agrarian, as was the Midwest. And not to mention, the Democratic Party was still a party that was okay with segregation and pro-segregation, although, for being quite honest, both parties were not necessarily segregation, and race politics simply was not an important issue for either party, despite the fact that the Republican Party was, at this time, still considered the party of abolition. The Republican Party was much more concerned with the interest of business and the merchant and industrial classes, whereas the Democratic Party was much more concerned with the plight of agrarian working farmers and the working poor in big cities. The New York City was a big hotbed of Democratic politics, as was Philadelphia. But in the West Coast, again, you have interest of industrial and shipping interests, as well as the gold mining industry. So, but this was the election of 1896, and as you can see, the Democrats and the Republicans, more or less, have flipped in the current context, right? So these are the elections through 1992, 96, 2000, and as you can see, Bill Clinton was able to win some of these upper Midwest states, the Mimel Man here in 1992, but by and large, the Midwest and the South have become solidly Republican. Even President Obama, who was able to win Florida and Virginia twice, you see, also won North Carolina in 2008. These states, these states are relatively new. They've been Republican for a very long time. Then Bill Clinton was able to win Florida in '96, but in general, many of these states have been Republican for a very long time. And as you see, the 2000 election was basically nearly a flip of the 1896 election. This is all about realignment. The parties do change. They respond to voters' interests. They respond to their electorate, and they try to make sure that that they are able to represent voters in some way. The problem is that parties have become weak as institutions. They're no longer able to control who their candidates are in some sense. The Republican Party, let's be quite honest, the Republican Party as an organization, as an institution, and the people who led the Republican Party did not want Donald Trump to be their nominee. They did not want that to happen. In fact, many Republicans who are elected to the Senate and House now today, according to news reports, are still quite unhappy with his performance as president. He is mired at the lowest approval rating of any president at this time in their first term in the history of polling, period. He's in the worst spot. And all of that was predictable because of his way he operates and what have you. Now, you may be a big fan of Donald Trump, but the fact is that everything he does is outside of the mainstream of presidential behavior, period. For as long as we've ever had presidents, what he does is different. So that's one of the reasons why the Republican Party was reticent, and one of the issues that he currently has. So these states show you, this is the 2004 election. This is interesting for a couple of reasons. One is because you see sometimes up here in Minnesota, for instance, we have this one. So the president is elected through the Electoral College, as we know, but sometimes members of political parties are the people who are elected or are selected to be the electors in the Electoral College. And sometimes they have what we call faithless electors. So in 2004 in Minnesota, John Kerry was the nominee of the Republican Party. However, John Edwards, his vice presidential candidate and the senator from North Carolina at the time, was able to get a presidential elector to vote for him because he made a mistake. This person is called the faithless elector. And generally speaking, members of the Electoral College are legally required to vote for the person to whom they are pledged. But these people can sometimes make mistakes, and if they make a mistake, it's legal. I mean, it is a legally binding vote, and so this happens sometimes as well. But it also goes to show you the weakness of the party, because had the party been stronger, then no one would have questioned whether or not John Edwards or John Kerry was the nominee. And the person who gets selected as an Electoral College elector should probably be invested enough in their party to know who the right candidate was. And as you see here, again, too, the popular vote and the Electoral College vote usually follow each other, but not always. George W. Bush was able to win the Electoral College and the popular vote in 2004. But as you see, again, it's not always the case. You see, President Bush was able to win an Electoral College vote of 286 to 251, which is quite close, but still, he barely won the popular vote. Just over 50% is my slide notes, 50.7% there. So here's President Obama and McCain there. So that's President Obama had a real Electoral College landslide in that election. And so again, the party, I like this map very much because you see the closeness of the election, right? So Missouri was very close, even Montana was very close. Some of these other states, deep red states, are very, very Republican states. Deep blue states are very, very Democratic. President Obama and Mitt Romney. So again, another Electoral College blowout. And then, of course, here is Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by something like 2 million votes over Donald Trump. But Donald Trump was able to win more Electoral College. And this actually, these numbers may still have changed because they certified the elections after I made these slides. And so I did not think to go back and look at them, so we should wait on the actual numbers here. But we do know that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by a little better than 2 million votes over Donald Trump. And she lost the Electoral College vote, right? And there were several faithless electors in this election. There's a faithless elector in Texas, a few of them actually. And then here, this is not a faithless elector. This is just the way Maine splits their Electoral College votes. Maine splits their Electoral College votes by congressional district and statewide votes. So the statewide vote, you get 2 Electoral College votes, and for each of the 3 congressional districts, you get an Electoral College vote. So Hillary Clinton won the state, but Donald Trump was able to win a congressional district, and so he got an Electoral College vote there. But Hillary Clinton, when she lost Pennsylvania, when she lost Wisconsin, she really lost the Electoral College vote. I mean, that's what it really amounted to. She needed another state or two, Michigan. So it's these 3 states here, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. That's what cost her. If she was able to win those states, she would have been good to go. Throughout the rest, Florida was a big loss as well. But losing Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, that's what cost her. That's the end. And she lost those 3 states by a combined vote total of something like 30,000 votes, if I'm not mistaken. It could less than 50,000 total. Right? So 50,000 voters in 3 different states make Donald Trump the president, not Hillary Clinton. So what are the faces of the party? The faces of the party are the party and the electorate, and this encompasses the activists, volunteers, which then brings you to the party and government. So activists and volunteers are the people, this is the lifeblood of the party, this is the grassroots. These are people who love the party, they wear the funny hats at conventions, they do the silly things in they go canvassing. They want to volunteer for politicians. They love politics so much. Then you have party and government as elected officials, and these are people who are appointed positions within government, such as cabinet secretaries and so on and so forth. Then you have party organization, and party organization is structural party leadership. So these are people like people who run the RNC and the DNC right now. So the RNC is being run by I forget the woman's name, but there's this is one of the first women to ever run the Republican Party. She's in charge now. McDonald, I believe, is her last name. Don't quote me on that. I'll come back to class on Wednesday and tell you who it is. And then the Democratic Party is being run by a former member of the Obama cabinet, whose name also escapes me at this moment, but is also sort of being co-chaired by Keith Ellison, who is a member of the Democratic Party in the Congress. And so Keith Ellison is a very important person in the Democratic Party right now. So, and then the party organization really does operate the party on a day-to-day basis, raises a lot of money, tries to make sure that the party can organize itself and get things done, and really focuses on fundraising and mobilization all the time. If you don't have money, you can't do well, and that's one of the big problems with the Democratic Party right now. The Republican Party is doing quite well as an institution from a fundraising point of view, which is really important, but the Democratic Party is not. The Democratic Party is nearly broke, and that is a problem. If you are a Democrat and you think that 2020 is going to be easy or fun, wrong. It's going to be real hard, and the Democratic Party is not doing a lot to get money right now, and that's a real issue. The party organization is crucial because without party organization, you don't get party in the electorate. You need party organization to find party in the electorate, to get them energized and activated, give them money to organize, give them money to get office space, give them money to get information and pamphlets and handouts and direct mail. You have to have the party organization to support the party in the electorate. The party in the electorate then supports party and government. These are the people who go to meetings. They volunteer for members of Congress to run for office. They try to get engaged. And then party in the electorate may generate people who want to run for public office. And so this is a real important feedback loop when you get party organization, energizes party in the electorate, which then finds people to be party in government or energize party in government. And then the party in government structures and helps the party organization. They share funds, they share resources, they share ideas, they share expertise. And then all of these three faces of the party working together generate a functioning party organization. National organizations are very complex, and they really got to oversee a lot of stuff, like convention delegates. These are people, members of the party, who formally nominate candidates for office. So these are the crazy people you see on C-SPAN or CNN dance it all night at the Democratic and Republican conventions during the during the presidential nominating conventions. Then you have the National Committee, and these are people who run the party on a day-to-day basis. They may be elected officials, they may be big-time donors, they may be long-term party members and party activists. These are just people who have been elected and selected. The Democratic Party is currently doing this right now. The Republican Party did theirs a few months ago. The Democratic Party is currently going through the process of reorganizing the National Committee, and it's causing a lot of trouble. If you've not been keeping up with this, then you should. And it's many of the issues that were demonstrated to be existent within the Democratic Party between the Bernie Sanders supporters and Hillary Clinton supporters are still there, have not been fixed, and it's becoming a real problem for the Democratic Party. The national chairperson is the person who is selected to be the formal head of the party, selected by the president, voted on by the party delegations, and they are in charge of making the party operational on a day-to-day basis. Then you have the state party. Excuse me. These are very different from state to state. Some of them are more conservative or liberal relative to the national party. And so, for instance, are Massachusetts Republicans the same as Georgia Republicans? No, they are not. So state parties are allowed to have leeway and differences that from the national party that you wouldn't automatically assume. The Democratic Party of Alabama is just a more conservative Democratic Party. It just is. The Democratic Party of North Carolina, Virginia may be more like the National Democratic Party, but it's still slightly more conservative. The Democratic Party of North Carolina is much more conservative than the Democratic Party of, let's say, California, let's say Oregon, or Washington State. Those are more liberal Democrats, and that's okay because that's what their state political culture allows. Similarly for Republicans, the Republican Party of Alabama is just more conservative than the average Republican Party in the country, and that's fine because that's the way Republicans in Alabama are. And so if you want to have a viable state party, you have to understand who your state members are and what they want so that you can reflect their interests. I mean, that is the point of a political party, to reflect the interests of and organize the interest of citizens. And so we should expect that there may be slight differences from state to state and differences from the national party at times as well. And then you come down to local organizations. These are the real grassroots. This is where your party activists really find a home. So you have the New Hanover Republican Party, the New Hanover Democratic Party, and the New Hanover County Republican and Democratic parties are really engaged at this local level. They cooperate with the state party, that then works up to the national level. And if you wanted to get started in politics, this is where you do it. You get started at the local level in your local political party. That gives you access to the state party and state policymakers, which then could introduce you to national folks, which then gets you up here, which next thing you know, you're Reince Priebus. You're basically a nobody, but all of a sudden you become a state party chairman. Now you're the national party chairman. You're good friends with the governor of your state. You're good friends with the Speaker of the House, who happens to be from your state. And then you're the chief of staff for the President of the United States. Did he ever expect to do that? Very unlikely. But he did it, and he worked through the party to get there, right? And that's just the nature of politics. I mean, that's the way you want it to work. But as I said, the Republican and Democrat parties are not the only games in town. There have been several other parties over time. You've got the Populist Party here, which was a pro-farmer party in the 1890s, really sort of a beginning of the progressive movement. The Socialist Party was very popular at one time in American history. As I said, the Democratic Party really just sort of took much of their platform in 32, and that's what saved the Democratic Party. Had the Democratic Party not taken some of those Socialist Party platforms like unemployment insurance, Social Security, like WPA, work projects, administration programs, then it's likely the Democratic Party might have folded in favor of the Socialist Party. We've had a bigger realignment than we did. The Communist Party has never really had a lot of sway in the United States, excuse me, but it has been out there. The Progressive Party was a big party in the early 20th century, ran a few presidential candidates, actually had a few electoral college votes here and there, but basically was never able to generate the kind of movement amongst the two major parties that it needed to become a major party itself. The American Independent Party was really built around George Wallace, who was a disaffected Democrat, and the American Independent Party were Southern conservative Democrats who became Republicans eventually. This was their middle ground. They couldn't, remember I said in class on last week that party ID, partisanship, is a deeply psychological construct. When you call yourself a Republican or a Democrat, that is a deeply psychological identity for you. And so many of these people, like George Wallace, for instance, have been born and raised Democrats. Their parents were Democrats. Their grandparents were Democrats. They've been Democrats for 100 years. And they just could not imagine a world in which they were not Democrats. And so they couldn't be Republicans, so they needed something in the middle way first. And that was this American Independent Party, which was basically just sort of a very conservative variant of what was formerly the Democratic Party, what was eventually becoming the Republican Party on some of these attitudes, because these aren't universally Republican attitudes. In the United States, we have two, generally speaking, big tent parties. They are not ideological parties. They are becoming ideological, which is one of the reasons why you see such a lack of governing. The United States political system is not built to handle ideological parties. We are built to handle parties focused on issues with various ideologies subsumed within them. But right now, it's not working that way for a variety of reasons, and it's causing problems. So that's why these American independent folks who were Democrats could transfer to the Republican Party and still operate in some ways. But then you have the Libertarian Party and the Reform Party. These are more modern organizations. And the Green Party is the left-of-center party still out there. Libertarian and Green Party are really the only two parties that are out there that are doing much these days, neither of whom are able to generate a lot of electoral success, which is, you go back to the definition of a political party. The definition of a political party is a group of people who share a set of agenda items and maybe ideology, who organize to get their members elected to office. So if you can't get your members elected to office, are you really a political party? It's up in the air. It's unclear. So this is some of the things that the Libertarian and Green Party have to work on for the future, getting their members elected to office. So we've had several other what we call third parties, quote unquote third parties in American politics. The most important thing to understand about this is very simple. Third parties don't win elections, but they change the debate around issues in the electorate. They may change salience. They may change how parties deal with issues. They change stuff, but they don't do it through winning elections. That's the power of third parties. That's the power. They change the debate around issues currently in the electorate. So, all right. Well, that's it for today. We'll finish that up. When we come back together, we will begin talking about political participation. I thought about making a video for that, but it's just too important for us not to talk about it face to face. So we'll come back on Wednesday and get that knocked out, and then we will keep moving forward. We are about a day behind, so I will send an updated email this afternoon or this evening with some updated information on the syllabus and what have you, and we'll keep moving forward. But I apologize for this once again. See you on Wednesday.